It is February 2025, and Danny D has been good enough to run the January numbers. So we're going to run through our regular market update, and we have quite surprising numbers this time. Danny, take us through the first zone here, if you would.
Yeah, so we'll start where we normally do with just the total volume sold, which if you're observant, you can see that really dropped quite a bit month over month. So we're down 33% month over month, down to just over 1,200 houses sold in January. And before you panic, look all the way across to the left. Look at where things were in January of last year. Look at the level of the drop off between December and January. It's not exactly the same as this year, but it's pretty significant. And again, we oftentimes talk about seasonality from year to year, similar patterns, things slow down in the winter. This is it, man. This is typically where the low is, and 1,200 homes sold feels pretty low. So we're hoping that things rebound here in February, but that was a change month over month. Year over year, we were down 8%.
Yeah, that's a big stretch. It's a big number. It's maybe the lowest I've seen. Obviously, it's seasonal, but it's a little lower even for seasonality standpoint. So days in the market is something that's also surprised me. This number spiked, and this has not been on trend with seasonality.
Yeah, this is quite a bit higher, and this is one that I had to double check and then triple check. We had a number of houses that went that I think one was out there for like 398 days. So, you know, there's that which can sway that average, which you can see is quite a bit higher in that blue bar. But what's also quite a bit higher is the median. So, you know, that just points to the midpoint of all the things that went quite a bit higher than normal. You can see that last year around this time, it was 16 days. We're up to 22 for January. Not sure exactly what's happening there, but it's definitely a sign of a much slower market. And I think that's also reflected in some of the other charts here.
Yeah, that's a big change, big spread off of typical seasonality. We'll see. Just know that when you're selling your house, if you price it correctly, you're still going to go opening weekend. But if you have to chase the market down a little bit, this is how this looks. We start to see way more days in the market. Again, median is the better indicator of that, 22 days. That's still a seller's market, but we're starting to balance out a bit. Mortgage rate, next slide, hovering right around the high sixes, low sevens. That's where it's been for more than a year at this point. So no really news to report there. The donut chart, Danny, run us through. This is a little bit different.
Yeah, this is maybe just a little bit different from what we saw in December. I think it just reflects more of a slowdown. You can see that the green section shrank just maybe 1% or so from last month. But it's that blue section, things that went within 5%, kind of plus or minus of the list price, that shrunk, and it traded with the orange section. So there were more things that went 5% or further below asking. So 5% or further below asking. And again, I think that's just a reflection, as you said, Rob, trying to find the right price at the right moment in time. If you miss, you're making some changes to your list price, and eventually you attract some interest. So that appears to be what's happening here between the longer days on market. More houses going below asking seems to be a reflection of the same trend.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I'm thinking through off of your note there, the houses that sold in January probably didn't put their house up right before the holidays, right in the mix of the slow and snowy times, meaning the things that sold in January are carries over from November. So that's indicative of the higher numbers as well. It's still higher than it was this time last year. So we'll see how this develops. Again, market's balancing. Price reductions follow this trend as well. 42% of sales had a price reduction. That's higher than I expected.
Yeah, definitely higher. And I guess the other thing to point out is you can see that things plateaued last year around that December and January timeframe. We went from 39% to now 42% of homes sold with a price reduction between December and January. Hope is things level off here. That's what we'd expect as everything opens back up for business. Like you said, rates still higher than probably most buyers would want them to be, but they're consistent with where they've been. People have had a year to orient themselves to that. So we suspect that, between that and I think there's something like 25 homes active on the market today. There's a good amount of supply for people that are out there buying, and we'd expect to see that turns around sooner than later.
Right. Now, I want to run through the average sales price because that's probably more important to sellers and buyers out there. There's a little gap here, but I want to point to the fact that all of these are anomalous spikes towards a more balanced market, away from a seller's market. If this continues, we'll have to keep tracking and see where it goes from there. But so far, we can still chalk it up to seasonality a bit. The question is, does it continue as we go into the spring market? And I don't think it will. Anecdotally, I think that we're seeing a lot more activity, a lot more appropriate pricing, and things are going quicker and more inventory. But we'll see how this goes. Danny, can you run us through the average sales versus average list price, please?
Yeah, this chart's always really telling, right? Because we're looking at over time how list price impacts sold price, and then how sold price then impacts list price, right? So there's this constant kind of exchange that happens there where people are trying to orient themselves to what the market is offering at that time. And so you can see that both lines there's separation there, which has been the case for the last 6 months or so. Not unusual. Again, the hot selling time is really through the summer. We see the crossover of these two lines typically around then. So there's definitely some distance still between where people are listing and where they're ultimately selling their house. But if you look back 12 months, even though things are down from the highs in the summer of 2024, even though things are going 13,000 or so below asking right now, they're still up year over year by $17,000 and change, and that's 5%. So if you're someone that isn't looking to buy or sell at all, you can take comfort in knowing that your house appreciated by 5% just in the last 12 months. That's pretty significant. And again, this is a seasonal pattern. We expect that as things start to pick up here in the spring, we'll be bottoming out somewhere around where we are now. And then prices will start to pick up as competition picks up again.
Yeah. So that's the main thing, is that we're still within our seasonal bounds here. More days on the market is typical of January. Less homes for sale is typical of January. If that trend continues upward on those metrics, then we have a different story. But right now, we're still within the seasonal bounds, even though it's more than expected, more than it has been in the past. We can chalk that up to cold weather, holidays, elections. That was a thing recently, different metrics. But when we get a big change, when we get an anomalous change, if we should be trending one direction and we start heading the other, we'll make a note of that, and that'll be the big news. But that's the reason we do these market updates every month. Danny, I'm very thankful that you like and know your numbers well enough that you pull these. I was looking through the MLS the other day. The MLS releases their numbers as well. Some of these houses in the MLS are in Dayton. That's not our market. Springfield's not our market. I don't know where Washington Courthouse is, but that's clearly different parts of the state, and that's not what we track. It's specifically the zip codes here, and there's a infographic here that Danny pulls every month. We pull our own numbers, so we're not tracking Kings Island sales or Cleveland sales. So I'm thankful for that. If we see anomalous changes, we'll definitely spread that around. And Danny, thanks for always pulling these numbers. Very insightful as always.